This is the TJ Hoisington Podcast. Unleash your greatness within.
Hey there, welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. In today's success interview, it was my privilege to interview William Vanderbloemen. And he just wrote this new book titled Be the Unicorn, 12 data-driven habits that separate the best leaders from the rest. Wow, let's go from good to great.
You already know. My passion and my mission to help you unleash your greatness within. My heart goes out to the underdogs that's on their way. If you think you can go from good to great, okay, let's motivate. GreatnessWithin.com. TJ Hoisington. GreatnessWithin.com. Oh, if you dreaming it, believe in it, work hard for it, and in the process serve others in a positive way. Think you can do it.
You see, William Vanderbloemen is the founder of Vanderbloemen Research Group, where now he has interviewed over 30,000 people to find out what their traits are and then fit them in the right company, right culture, and so forth. And he has discovered some habits and traits that make the difference between a good leader to a great leader. And we're going to cover some of those detailed traits and habits in this interview. Now, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, then do me a favor, subscribe, and make sure if you like what you hear, hey, click that notification button so that, hey, you get a reminder every time we come out with a new success interview. If you're listening to this because you downloaded it from iTunes or iHeartRadio or what have you, thank you for being a part of my podcast community. And if you've watched this on Rumble, I thank you for following me over there as well. So without any further ado, let's jump right into this interview. William, it's great to have you on the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast.
Thanks so much. Appreciate being here, TJ.
No, it's great to have you. You have a new book out titled Be the Unicorn. The subtitle is great too. 12 data-driven habits that separate the best leaders from the rest. And we're going to get into that in this interview. But before we jump into the book, could you do the audience and myself a favor and give us a little bit of your backstory?
Yeah, I can try. A lifetime ago, I was a pastor, so there's a risk of me rambling on and on and on, but I'll try it. I started an executive search firm, and as a result of that, don't really do many searches anymore, but head up the writing and sort of brand ambassador for the thing. But started it on a card table. Probably there's some listeners out there that have done the entrepreneurial thing, like didn't know if we'd do anything, make any money or anything like that. But really the origin goes farther back. Always been an entrepreneur, even down to when I was a newspaper boy at 9 years old, buying up the routes next to me and that sort of thing. So I think that's probably chronic and incurable, but that's just, some of you know what that's like. You have that condition. Then went into pastoral work. I had I was a pretty good rebel without a cause in college, but calmed down and went into pastoral ministry and had a great run there. Was a senior pastor at a pretty large church here in Houston at a very young age. Went through divorce, which I would not recommend, but wasn't anything exciting enough for a tabloid, but tragic nonetheless. And that left me as a single dad with 4 kids, and in no shape to be, offering spiritual guidance to people. So I stepped away and went into the corporate world, went to work for a Fortune 200 company. They put me on kind of a management rotation track thing where do a year here, do a year there, and learn the business. First year was in HR, which great people, loved them, realized I'm not an HR person. That's just not my thing. But the CEO, while I was there, said, I've been here 9.5 years, which is a lifetime for a company that size. Time to find my successor. And they hired this thing called a search firm. I'd never heard of such a thing. 90 days later, they've got their new CEO. So you back up to the church that I served here in Houston, First Presbyterian Church, it took them 3 years of searching to find me. I left after 6 years. It took them 3 years of searching to find the next guy. And everyone just assumed that's life as normal. And after seeing this gap between what my old world, church world, sees as normal, 3 years or 6 years looking and 6 years with the pastor. I mean, that's kind of crazy. And then seeing how the business world is like, no, we use these search firms and we're done in 90 days. I was left with a question. Can I build something that's a business that would serve that gap? And so I came home from work. Adrian and I had been married 3 months. We blended our families. We just bought a house that we could barely afford. And I said, babe, I think I'm supposed to quit my job and start something new for churches. And she looked at me and said, oh, that's because churches love new ideas, right? Nobody's ever said that. So she should have said, I love you. We have children to feed. I love your dreams and your visions, but go back to work. And instead she said, let's give it a try. And it was the fall of 2008, which was a brilliant time to quit your job and start a small business.
Yeah,
so
for real, right?
But fast forward 15 years later, we've completed 3,000 searches. What started as a question of could we help churches find a pastor better and faster has mushroomed out into schools that need C-suite, large nonprofits that need C-suite. And now what's really exciting, probably one of the fastest growing parts of our business, is values-based businesses. So like the granddad started the business, dad's ready to retire, none of the grandkids want the business, but we have a code, we have a way we like to do things, and we want people that match our values. So that's been a fun thing to watch grow. So that's probably way more than you wanted to hear.
No.
But along the way, we've completed 3,000 searches now. And in every search that we do, the very short list of the very best of the best get a super long interview from us face to face. And we've now done 30,000 of those and just finished a pretty massive research project about those interviews, asking, do the very best we've ever interviewed have anything in common? And that led to, the book that you mentioned and kind of why we're here today. So,
that's great. By the way, I'll just throw this in here. Back about the same time period, I said to my wife, I was working with Tony Robbins at the time, and I said, it's time for me to leave and kind of go off on my own and do my own thing. And where I thought she was going to shut me down, she did write me a 4-page letter to say, are you sure? And but anyway, she supported me by the end of that letter, and here we are today. So
what'd you do for Tony?
I was just a traveling sales rep or it was called a sales trainer. So in that year I worked with Tony, that was 1999 to 2000. And I think, I was really young then, and I did 240 presentations inside all kinds of different businesses. So you can imagine the growth and learning curve that I received in that 1 year.
Yeah,
So
no kidding. That's like, Tony's like, the only way to learn a language is full immersion. That'd be the way you learn sales.
That's it. And that was my belief when I left the successful company that I was running at the time, doing food storage, which is kind of a big thing right now. Back then I was doing food storage, and I thought my dream has always been to do the things like Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, so forth. Now this is 26 years ago, but I thought, well, the way to do it, I always learned when I listened to Tony Robbins tapes, right? He was always like full immersion. So that's what I did.
That's the
so
thing.
You get it.
I'm a business mastery graduate, the whole thing. So,
that's great.
In fact, I'm pretty good at sales, and I stink at training people how to do sales. So I hired one of his to learn how to do sales coaches and walked through that early in the company.
Wow, what a small world. Okay, that's great. Okay, so you wrote the book, Be the Unicorn. I've read the book, powerful. I love how you wrote it. And it's not it's your thoughts for sure, but it's also backed up in your research. You also have stories in the book. And you actually, what I like too, is you use quotes from other successful leaders who have been in the world of leadership. And boy, do they shine some great insights on leadership. So here are, for the audience's benefit, I'm just going to run through the 12 traits. Here they are. And then we'll start with trait number 1, because I think that's a good one to start with.
Sure.
Okay, so number 1 is the fast. Number 2 is the authentic. Number 3, the agile. Number 4, the solver. Number 5, the anticipator. Number 6, the prepared. Number 7, the self-aware. Number 8, the curious. Number 9, the connected. Number 10, the likable. Number 11, the productive. And number 12, the purpose-driven. Okay, so let's start with trait number 1, the fast. What are you referring to when you talk about the fast?
Yeah, well, so it's a little bit of a clickbait title, if I'm being honest. People, fast. I need to learn what that is and what that
is.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean raw speed. I'm Dutch, TJ. We're not fast. We're not built for speed. We're built for wind resistance. But that's kind of what
yeah.
So really, if I were titling it super properly, I would say the responsive. Mm-hmm. So the unicorns that we interviewed, we studied, it's like, what do they have in common that other people don't? It wasn't how tall they were. It wasn't how good looking they are, or how smart, or where they went to school. It was none of that. What it boiled down to was habits, not even traits, because you're born with a trait.
Right.
Habits that can be learned, very different than something you're born with or just have a propensity toward. I mean, I love golf. I would love to win the Masters golf tournament. You can let me practice all day, every day. It ain't going to happen, right? But what we uncovered here were habits that are like, actually, if you went through a 6-month coaching model, or you could become a 10 in every one of these habits. And we started with the fast or the responsive for a reason. First of all, unicorns that we know are almost obsessed with getting back to people in a timely fashion. The rest of us are pretty horrible at it. And we looked at all kinds of different illustrations around that, even down to like dating apps. And the dating app sends you you might be interested in, and then the people that receive that notification take forever to respond. Right. Or candidates looking for a job, people who are looking for their next position, and a recruiter reaches out to them. They take forever to get back to people. Sales and marketing. You get an inbound lead, somebody fills out a form online, and, somebody get back to them. Most people wait. I think the average response time, a massive study we read, from the time a lead comes in electronically to a sales call being made, the average time is 42 hours. I mean, not to geek out on you, but the study that I'm referencing that studied all these companies that use inbound marketing, which is basically fill out a form online and somebody will call you. That's the simplest way to describe it.
Right.
The study was asking the question, does response time to when the form comes in to making the sales call, does the length of response time affect the likelihood of having the next sales call?
Yes.
So the study found, if you respond within 60 seconds of receiving a lead, yes, you have a 98% chance of having a sales call. If you wait 20 minutes from receiving a lead, you now have a 60% chance of having a sales call. If you wait, and it goes on and on and on. If you wait 24 hours from receiving a lead, you have a less than 1% chance of getting a sales call. And the average response time is 42 hours. So just by our nature, it's an observation of human nature. Sure. Most all of us are terrible at getting back to people. Why did we make this a habit? We didn't make anything. We just revealed the data. But why make this one first? It's the easiest one to learn. Just get back to people. That's it. There's the training. Here, I'll do module 2. Just get back to people. All right, you ready for module 3? Get back to people.
Yeah,
It's
in a
not
timely
in an
fashion.
AI,
Quick.
not in an AI chatbot or autoresponder kind of thing. Like a human
Yes.
response that's fast and intentional makes a lasting impression that will cause you to stand out of whatever sector you're trying to stand out in, whether that's job interview, entrepreneur, building a team that's remembered. You build a team of fast responders, you will be remembered. Tony is excellent at that. This is the easiest one. And one thing that I believe is the quickest way to make a lifelong change of habits is to have a short-term win with your first habit you
Amen.
change.
That's great.
And then you stack momentum, right? This is the easiest one, so we put it first. Do this first. You'll start to build momentum, which is every leader's best friend is momentum. And that's why, we put it there where we did. Get back to people quickly. You will stand out in the crowd.
And I think whether the market is positive or whether the market is tough and negative, doesn't matter. Companies and organizations 100%. Are looking like unique ways they can differentiate themselves, how they can stand out. I hear that with the people I consult with and so forth. How do we stand out differently? And what you're saying, just based on that research, that chapter alone, you're saying, listen, if you show initiative and you get back to people in a timely fashion, fast versus slow, listen, you're going to stand out on just that alone. Am I reading into that right?
That's exactly right. And if you can stand out with speed and intention, then you're on another planet of being recognized. Like, oh man, I've been on the Narrows Bridge before it was ever a 4-lane thing. Back when it was the little 2-lane that twisted back and forth. I've been there. You know that. See, now I'm talking to you about something in your world immediately, fast. And it just puts you an entirely different level. When we started the company, I got back to people fast because I had 6 kids to feed. You reach out to me, I'm calling you right away.
Exactly.
But we just kept doing it and kept getting feedback saying, you guys actually got that done really fast. You got back to me so fast.
So as a side note to that, for any leader listening, who drives that? I'm assuming it's management, it's leadership saying, hey, it's our culture here. We respond quickly because we care about our customers, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that for good or bad, I'm driving it at our company. And maybe there are different ways of doing it. But I think all of these habits, if you want them to become manifest throughout your team, you've got to embody them. And you got to put up scalable guardrails. Like I was, long before I read that study, I insisted that you get back to people within 60 seconds. And when we were just a handful of people just starting the company, everybody was expected to do that. This is so bad. We would, if we were interviewing you to come to work with us, and we flew you in from Seattle, and you spend the day with us, and then we get you back home, you land at SeaTac, you're getting to your car, and you would get a text from somebody, an area code you don't know. Oh, TJ, this is Ben. I work at Vanderbloemen, but I was on the road today and I didn't get to see you. Thanks so much for coming by, spending a day with us. Really excited to connect with you whenever you have a chance. Just let me know. And you're probably going to get that at like 10 p.m. Pacific time, and your brain is fried and you just want to get home to your bed. So if you don't text back, not the end of the world. If you text back, love to visit, how about I'll reach out tomorrow? And you do that night, oh my gosh. Huge. If you're anything under 42 hours, right? If you're under 24 hours, it's great. If you text me back within a minute and say something witty about the weather in Houston or whatever, it's grayer there than here today, something like, now you have our attention. And that might border on entrapment, but I found that people who are bent that way don't mind getting the texts, and people who do mind getting those texts would probably be miserable working at our company.
Fair point. Okay, that's great. Yeah, you talk about that in the book, and I don't remember the exact scenario, but it was about who's the baseball player, who's the baseball owner. You text that over, and you may not even care about baseball and may not even know the answer to this unique, question that you text them. But listen, it's a sign to you, if you're going to bring them into your company or whatever, it's a sign to you that if they respond quickly, like, hey, it was a great visit with you, thanks for allowing me the time, blah, 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 just something general, that's better than nothing at all.
And the other thing I'd say, TJ, and you didn't ask this, but just as a recruiting tip to people listening out there, because I'm sure there's some people hiring, or they're going to have to once you get to January. Sure. As an entrepreneur who started a business, I know you're spinning 50 plates at once, right? So you do things in the allotted time and that's it. I made the mistake for a long time of assuming that the interview of a candidate was limited to the 90 minutes or 2 hours that I was actually sitting down with them. No, the interview is every interaction you have with that person from the moment you're thinking about them to the moment you decide. And you ought to use all kinds of time slots and zones, like a text at a weird hour, or changing the venue of the meeting if you need extreme agility. There are lots of ways to interview outside the bounds of the normal interview time slot. And I just never knew that as a busy entrepreneur. And now I'm finding, no, I'm gonna use all the time.
Oh, I love it. No, that's great. Thank you for adding that in there. Now, you did bring up in that chapter, and then we'll move on to the next trait, but you did bring up in that chapter, the key is discerning quickly. And the reason I highlighted that is because I've met people over the years that maybe relied early on in their life, relied on feelings and intention to get things done, but they've since learned they got to rely on the data. And so they slow down the process of making a decision. Yeah. And I'm trying to train them back to, but listen to your feelings, listen to the gut, and try to balance that with the data that you have and make decisions quicker. And they just, for some reason, people are skittish. So what would you say about discerning quickly?
Yeah, well, I think people are smart. So I think people are smarter than they give themselves credit. So when I was thinking of going into executive search, I just learned that this thing existed, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's probably the best in the world in the energy sector, like oil and gas and all that, and here in Houston, about whether or not I should go into executive search. And I said, Bruce, I just don't know if this is for me or not. And he said, let me ask you something. Let's pretend, now this was 2008, so the iPhone had not yet come out.
Yep.
So go back that way in tech with me. Mm-hmm. Let's pretend you're on a one-on-one ski trip with your daughter, special time. You're on the lift with her, you're having a good conversation, and your phone rings. What do you do? And I said, well, it depends on who it is. And he said, you're going to do fine. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, well, first of all, you had your phone with you. Secondly, you check to see who it was. Some calls need to be taken right away, some don't. And that means you'll be fine. I think most people know in their gut whether to respond quickly or not. I remember standing in line, finally got to a place where we had a little extra money. We took the kids to Disney World. We're standing in line for Dumbo forever, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to lose viewers right now, but it's not a good ride. You just kind of go up. Right. But you wait forever with every other parent and screaming children. We're finally getting on the Dumbo ride, and a call came through that I had to take. And Adrian said, "You're seriously taking a call while we're on the Dumbo ride?" And I said, "Adrian, this is the kind of call that got us to the Dumbo ride."
Amen. I hear you. Yeah. And sometimes on the outside, people can't see it, but you have to discern. So listeners, discern, because you say in the book, quote, "The fast is not a matter of saying yes to everything." And I think that's a good reminder because, hey, you want to be fast, you want to take initiative, you want to go. But at the same time, not everything has the same priority.
Yeah, so. And if you're a business owner right now and you're like, I'm all fired up, I'm going to get my people responsive, I'm going to start texting, Good, that's good. Do it, embody it.
Yeah.
And build guardrails. So now that we're bigger, sales and marketing better get back within 60 seconds, but the bookkeeper doesn't have to, right? So we instituted, for instance, we put up guardrails where during work hours, respond right away unless you're in the middle of something really important. But after hours, if you email after hours, if you email me or anyone in the company, then the rule is I will get back to you the next time I'm on email, and certainly within 24 hours. Some of our people are night owls. They're going to email at 12:30 at night. Others of us are morning people. No. If you Slack me after hours, okay, now we're at DEFCON 3. Like that's okay. As soon as I have a minute, I need to answer. If I'm, sitting down to dinner with the family, well, it can wait till after dinner, but need to do it as soon as I can. If you text message me after hours, DEFCON 2, I need to respond right away. If you call me on the phone after hours, for your younger listeners, you can actually talk on your iPhone. It's amazing. But if you call me after hours, I have to pick up. No questions. Right away, pick up. So we built, for our own purposes, a little sort of decision tree just based on how the message is coming in, so that we can be responsive without being tyrannical.
Love it. That's great. So build the guardrails into it. Okay, let's shift to the next trait. And this one, I feel like I've trained a lot on. I think it's a valuable one, a hugely valuable one, and it's called the authentic. Could you talk about the authentic? Because there's a ton of great points you put in here.
Yeah. So let's go back to our friend Tony as an example. I assume you've been around him backstage and all, up close and personal, right?
I have. Yep.
It's no different than what's on stage.
Right.
It's no different. Authenticity is not having to tell everybody everything that's on your mind and heart all the time. It's not about having to reveal your deepest trauma. It's not about, having to overshare at the office. It is about being the same on stage as you are backstage, however that occurs in your life. And I would suggest that people need to master that right away, because the backstage is disappearing quickly. Everyone's on camera all the time. Every single leader, whatever dinner you're at a restaurant, somebody's filming something somewhere. So how do you train yourself to be the same on stage as backstage? And more importantly, how do you broadcast that to others? Like I'll give you a life hack that's not in the book, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
You ever meet somebody and you talk to them for a little while and you walk away saying, they made me feel like I was the only person in the room?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's an amazing gift.
It is.
And everyone that's done that to me, I want to trust. They must be authentic. They're not a slick sales guy. They're not talking too fast. What are they doing that's making me trust them? Here's one thing, a lost art that you can fix right now that will make people trust you more. Look other people right in the eye. Sounds simple, but nobody does it. And the younger generations have no idea how to do this. My kids that I love so much that are in college will FaceTime their mother regularly, and I'll drop by to say hello. I'm kind of like an NFL backup quarterback, but in that equation. But hope you're doing well. But we get nervous when you're the main thing, But I drop by to say hi. I don't even see their faces because they're walking around with their phone while they're FaceTiming, and you see their nose or their chin. I said, Winnie, your nose your nostrils look great today, babe. Like, so, and she didn't even know. People don't do this. Now, even with adults, we don't really look people in the eye. Now, here's what I mean. You probably know this, but you only look out of one of your eyes. One eye is for vision. The other one provides perspective, depth perception, some sense of periphery. But you're really only looking out of one eye. That's why on rifles with a scope, you only put one eye in. We don't look through both, just one. 90% of all humans are right eye dominant. Next time you sit down with someone, look them squarely in their right eye. You can't look at both at once. You can't look at the bridge of the, look them squarely in their right eye. You have a 90% chance of making a connection with them that is unlike any other and will cause them to trust you. And they'll walk away saying, he made me feel like I was the only person in the room. She seems so authentic. My goodness, they exude authenticity. So there's a little life hack that's not in the book that might help people.
No, that's great. So you just triggered a memory. I was brought into a company. It was a public utilities. And one of the things that I ask when I go into companies to do consulting is I want to interview 15 to 20 of your employees. I want some management in there. I want some frontline workers in there. And I want to get a feel of the culture. Then after I did those interviews, I went out to dinner that night with the director and the kindest person I thought I had ever met. But I was a little bit befuddled because everything I heard earlier that day was not as positive as I was hearing at that dinner time. And when I walked in the next morning to do the training and so forth, I kind of saw him talking rough to the employees. That wasn't the same person I was at dinner with the night before.
That's right.
And there was a little pattern with this too, which is a little hack for all the leaders and managers that are in there. And that is touch points, meaning this manager had a door with a stairwell that went directly down to his car without having to leave his office. And so he would come in, he would go right up to his room, he would get his work done. And then at the end of the day, he would scoot on out of there without talking to anybody. You know what? The feeling was in that organization is starting with the leader. There was not a feeling of authenticity. There was not a feeling of vulnerability. There was not that feeling of trust because it seemed like he didn't care. And so one thing that I teach, and maybe you've seen this, is, hey, just make sure that you're touching base with your people. You say in the book, actually, when you start a meeting, right, it's important that you ask about their lives. You get off the subject at hand for maybe 30 seconds, a minute or more before you get into the business of things. And it's about keeping it real. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, just, one thing I have to remember as a, type A driven, Enneagram 7, DI on the disc, most entrepreneurs who speak those things like, yes, right. No, that's me. I want to get stuff done. And the productive is a habit of unicorns. But you can be productive and authentic at the same time. And I walk into a meeting with one little thought in my head: relationship before task, William. Relationship before task. Just, I have to say it to myself: relationship before task. And spend just that brief minute parked.
Yep, that's huge. In fact, you say early on, if I go back to the introduction, so I'm taking you backward, but you say, you're quoting one of the consultants in the book who refers to a unicorn or a leader who, quote, plays best with others. I think at the core, what I sensed as I was reading your book, it's about leaders who connect with their people, who play well with their people, and so forth. So I think authenticity has a lot to do with that. And you say about authenticity, you say, you don't need to be perfect, just authentic.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. There's a great definition of success that speaks to authenticity. And the first time I heard it, Coach Bill McCartney, who was the football coach at Colorado a long time ago, I don't know if Dion was born, but it was a while ago. He used to say success is when the people who know you the best love and respect you the most. The closer you get to somebody, are they more of what you thought they'd be or less? Is the backstage the same as the on stage? It's all kind of interconnected.
And it just goes back to how you started this section of, you don't have to share everything about your private life and things like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being kind, being respectful, behind the scenes or in front of the scenes, right?
That's right.
We're going to be true. Okay, love it. All right, now you brought up this authenticity, and I love this trait, which is the curious. And let me just quote Steve Jobs, because I think Steve Jobs Probably would, and I don't know him personally, but probably was not the kindest, most respectful person. I do think he was probably authentic. I'm sure he was real behind the scenes as he was in person, which was a driver, get it done, visionary kind of a personality. But you say this in the book, you quote Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs once said, "Much of what I stumbled on into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on." All right, let's talk about curiosity.
Yeah, well, this is one of those. There are two of the habits that I noticed that we're really, really good at as young kids, and it goes away as we get older. And curiosity is one of them. I mean, if you have kids, you remember the phase when they were about 2 or 3 when all they asked was why. Why? And then you end up doing something, if you're like me, something stupid, sounding like one of your parents saying, because I said so. But when we're younger, we naturally ask questions. As we get older, we just accept status quo. And if you need like a great quick video on this, the very famous Simon Sinek of Start With Why. The great leaders ask the why behind the what. The best leaders I've been around are the ones who ask the best questions. And not to jump back to my previous career as a pastor, but like Jesus, I won't get the numbers absolutely precise, so please don't use AI and find out that I'm wrong. But in general, right? Jesus was asked, according to the scriptures, something like 120 questions. Okay. 90 of the times that he was asked questions, he answered by asking another question. And like in the Greek, which I took a fair amount of, it's like laborious. It's like he answered the question they asked him by asking them a question, and so he asked them saying, it's like ask. There's something in us that naturally the why atrophies, but the unicorns are consistently asking good questions, and it makes all the difference.
Okay, so my son, when he was 17 years old, I ran an assessment on him that could measure that curiosity, specifically the intuition. And the balance of the traits are in this particular, it's the Harrison assessment. It's the balance between intuition and analytical or data-driven. I took that at 17. He was low on the analytical, but really high on the intuition, which made sense because he asked a lot of questions as a young boy. We drove down the road one day and he said, "Dad, be careful driving down the road. I have this feeling that there's going to be a crash up ahead."
Yeah.
I didn't think much of it, but lo and behold, I slowed down. I trusted him. And there was a crash that had just happened right in front of us. I don't know how the universe works that way, but what I noticed after he went through and graduated with a finance degree at Brigham Young University, I took his test, what would that be, 4 years later, and he's like a 9 on analytical and only a 3 on intuition. And here, from a dad's perspective and a consultant at the same time, I think it's pounded into our thinking. And I think leaders also pound it in to be data driven. Look at the data. And what I find myself coaching is, yes, look at the data, consider the data, but have it balanced with curiosity and trusting that gut feeling and question it and be more curious about both sides, not either or. Anyway, I don't know if that triggers any thoughts for you.
No, totally. In the productive habit of unicorns, one thing that we've noticed is young kids want to go get stuff done. If you want to meet the person on this planet with the single most amount of energy that can tell you an expert opinion on anything, go talk to a second or third year consultant at McKinsey or Bain, or because they know it all, right?
Yeah.
you talk to a 20-year veteran at Bain or McKinsey, you're like, well, I've seen it a lot of different ways now. There's I started pastoring this huge church when I was 31, and I was in so far over my head, I didn't even know it. But because I was 31, I knew everything. And it was awesome. You get a little older, it's like, oh, and you go back to the questions.
Totally.
But can't get paralyzed in the data. You've got to stay productive, even when your certainty isn't quite there with the data.
Agree, totally agree. And I would just say, as a little life hack, a great conversationalist is someone who spends 80% of the or 20% of the time asking questions and 80% of the time listening. And so the more questions you can ask and find out more and so forth, you're considered a great conversationalist. So ask more questions, turn up that curiosity dial, and you'll get further ahead. Love it. That's really great. And by the way, you say in that chapter a couple things. There was some research or a finding that you came across. You say curiosity is anytime we take genuine interest in someone, become absorbed with a show in the Nature Channel, or get caught up in our kids' research project to the point that they've long since gone to bed, and you're doing the deep dive on the use of portcullis. I think I said that right.
Yes.
Did I say it? Did I say it right? Portcullis?
Yes.
In the early medieval European fortress construction. It's not just science. Curiosity is looking around us and letting our brains be captivated. Love it. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think on the human to human side, these are all human to human skills.
That's right.
Which are going to become, they've always been important. They've always been the ball game. I think as the world inevitably becomes more automated in the next 10 years.
Yes.
AI takes us places we haven't thought about yet. There's always been a hunger inside me, and I think inside people, to meet someone they really connect with that treats them well.
That's right.
As we get more automated, that hunger is going to spike. Mm-hmm. And so if you work on these 12 human to human habits, you will be remembered. You will not get replaced by AI. The AI world cannot do any of these 12 habits. And with the curiosity piece, I love the 20% asking questions, 80% listening. And there's no percentage left for you to talk about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Even though, and I know the struggle is everybody's favorite subject is themselves. So if there is that temptation to want to share me, but the more you can hold it back and find out, make the interest on them, there's a connection facet or opportunity.
I would say without exception.
Yeah.
The most successful people I've dealt with in life, presidents, CEOs, well-known personalities. The most successful are the people who insist on focusing the conversation on me and asking questions about me. And that's not a coincidence. That's a reality.
Yep. And going back to what you said just about 2 minutes ago, where you used the term soft skills. I was interviewing 8 years ago when I started the podcast, right? Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager. And, he said, I always remember this from that podcast. He says, TJ, he says the soft skills really are the hard skills. And I think what you're talking about with your book, right? Be the Unicorn. These traits really will separate the average leaders from the great leaders. And so I would encourage everybody to get this book. Okay, last trait, and then we're coming up toward the end. Last trait is likable. The likable. Let's talk about being likable. We've already talked a little bit about kindness, but let's go more specific on likable.
Yeah. So there's just some people that play better with others. There's some people that stand out in the crowd because they are highly likable. I mean, my COO, can deliver bad news to people in our company, and they walk away thinking, why didn't I think of that first? This is a fabulous idea. This ability to be liked, and all of these habits are interrelated. Correct. If you're curious about the other, you'll be more liked. If you're authentic and look people in the eye, you'll be more liked. Mm-hmm. But if you'll focus some of your energy on how do I increase them liking me? What can I do to serve them? What can I do to ask about them? How do I push my focus onto them so much that they walk away saying, I like that person? That's a whole lot different than saying, how do I win the popularity contest? That's not a trait of the unicorns. It's the, golly, I don't know how they did it, but within 10 minutes, I like them.
Yeah.
And one day there will be a data-driven book on how to actually achieve likability. I'll buy that book because
Amen.
it's a tough thing.
Well, I think a lot of your traits kind of point to that. If you can get these traits balanced pretty well. Because listen, I was with a vice president who hired a lot of people to come in and work more clerical. And now today they're being asked to develop more relationships with their clientele. Well, those are almost two different kind of thought patterns there, clerical data entry versus relationship building. So I said, well, why can't we, as you hire people in the future, find people that have both those traits? Because you need them both for the job that you're doing. And he responded to me with, TJ, there is no such thing as a unicorn. And I remember I accepted it there for a second, but I had to think, no, I've seen people change. I've seen people develop over time that have become more effective and can increase some of those traits that are necessary if they have the why behind it, right? The vision.
That's right.
Okay, so here's a competency. Study the finding that you found, and it has to do with likable. You say, first, the feelings act as the gatekeeper. If you don't like the person, they won't have the chance to show their competency. Second finding, what little competency a person has will be maximized if they're liked. Right? Likability trumps competency almost every time. But you would agree, correct, that there's a balance between just being likable and also having the knowledge, the skills, the competency.
Yeah, I think and I'm thinking about all the entrepreneurs listening. I got a buddy who wrote an article, gosh, it's probably 10 years ago in the New York Times. It still gets Googled. You just need to hear the title. You don't need to read the article.
Okay.
What do you do with the brilliant jerk? That's a great title. Mm-hmm. And everybody's worked with one before. The sales guy who hits all his numbers, which feeds everybody in the company and is a total rear end. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how competent they are, you can't walk all over people and succeed. Now, there's some, my brain surgeon, if I ever have to have brain surgery, I don't know that I care that they're nice as much as that they're a really good surgeon. But for most jobs, likability is going to be it. And by the way, the highly competent driven jobs, the competency driven things like landing a plane, brain surgery, you name it, all of those are going to become so automated that the humans left in those roles are going to have to be likable. Because the room for precision will be on the machine and not on us.
I agree. And something that you said in between there, I've often said the higher the competency in a particular role, I'm thinking of Steve Jobs, he could still garner respect without having a high level of likability, right?
That's right.
If you will. So, but that won't work. That's an extreme example. Bottom line, most managers, supervisors, leaders we're going to work with are going to have to focus on that trait, how to work well with others.
I had a preaching professor at Princeton who used to say, people will not learn from someone they do not like.
Love it. Okay. I think that's great. Listen, this has been awesome to have you on the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. And wow, I could just tell that you have a lot of insights. Vanderbloemen, right? That's how you say your last name.
Yeah, that's right.
Vanderbloemen Research Group. And I would encourage everybody to go out, get a copy of Be the Unicorn, and take your leadership habits and traits, right, to that next level. And you really do a good job illustrating each one of them. So how would they go about getting a copy of the book?
Yeah, so I hated my name growing up because it was long and complicated. I love it now because the reality is you can misspell Vanderbloemen into Google 100 different ways and it'll go right back.
Oh, will it really? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's fantastic. It works on Amazon too. So just go to Amazon, type Vanderbloemen, however you want to type it. you'll find it.
Oh, that's cool.
There's one website you might try going to if you want a little more. There's some bonus content. It's actually a link to a software assessment, personality assessment we've done around the unicorn traits. That is theunicornbook.com. Theunicornbook.com.
Okay,
That'll be your sort of one-stop shop.
Okay, we'll put that up there. All right, William, is there any last thoughts you'd like to give the audience
just
today?
thank you for what you're doing to serve people who are trying to raise it up a level. That's everybody's got it in them. If you're listening today, you have this in you.
Amen.
And, people like TJ are trying to equip you. Hopefully this book will give you some equipping. I'm afraid at the end of the day, all we've discovered in Be the Unicorn is the plan. It's like owning a treadmill. Now you have to get on it and not hang laundry from it, right? So lean into TJ. Thanks for what you're doing. Lean into resources like this and keep after it, because you have something greater in you than you know.
Amen. Believe that 100%. So let's go do it. And I would just remind the audience to trust your gut. If your gut says, you know what, I was just kind of rude back then, 10 minutes ago, maybe I should go kind of soften it a little bit, apologize. Maybe I went a little overboard. Follow your gut. Do the right thing, right? You say, but I'm a leader. I don't have to apologize. Well, listen, it's about working well with other people. And part of that means you got to give a little bit. So follow that heart a little bit more. And I think, William, your message here is really powerful. So nice job. It's been great having you on the show.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, TJ.
You bet.
Hey there, thanks for taking the time out to listen to my podcast. I want you to know that I am grateful that you are a part of my community, and I hope that you're getting a lot out of my various podcast episodes. You see, it is my goal to provide you with those slide edge principles, strategies, and inspiration that can help you achieve your goals and your dreams. My one request is, if you enjoy my podcast in general, or you have listened to an episode that you really liked, could you do me a favor? It would mean the world to me if you could write a simple review, or if you could simply give me a star rating. I would really appreciate it. Now go out there and unleash your greatness within.
GreatnessWithin.com